So how does Lithuania have a border with the Russian Federation? Hello, welcome to Dangerous Policy, a channel aimed at intelligent people wanting to discuss important issues facing life and society. My name is Crispin, and today I want to talk about new developments on Lithuania's border with the Russian Federation. Really interesting part of the world, and in fact, if you're a casual observer, what I just said doesn't make a lot of sense. If you look at a map, you've got Estonia, Belarus on Russia's western frontier, but there's also a critical Russian exclave right there on the Baltic Sea on Lithuania's western side called Kaliningrad. Why is it there? Well, it was founded nearly 700 years ago as Königsberg by the Teutonic Order as part of the Northern Crusades fighting against the pagan Lithuanians. We will discuss that, of course, in part 2 of our history on Lithuania. But for now, recognize that it was originally German, and when Germany unified in the 19th century, it was part of that German state. A critical part, in fact, because it was the birthplace of the German royal family. After World War I, they lost a lot of territory, but retained Königsberg as East Prussia. And then after World War II, it was incorporated into the Soviet Union. Now, the war was not kind to Königsberg. There was a lot of destruction. And as the Soviet forces advanced, there was a significant depopulation of the area of Germans as they rushed to escape the advancing Soviet forces. And so by the time the Soviets got there, there was 100,000 Germans less than there was beforehand, not to mention the casualties of war. And then after the war, Stalin didn't want to give that territory to anyone else. He decided that he would keep it for himself. There was discussion about handing it over to Lithuania, but Stalin didn't trust the Lithuanians because they had been forcibly incorporated into the Soviet Union, and this was a critical strategic point there on the Baltic Sea. Instead, he sent 400,000 Russian colonists to populate that area. Nevertheless, when Stalin died in 1953 and his successor Nikita Khrushchev took over, Khrushchev did offer the Lithuanian government this territory. He suggested that they annex what is now Kaliningrad. The Lithuanian government refused, and this is really interesting. The Lithuanian government said that they didn't want to incorporate another 500,000 Russians into the Lithuanian state, and that really indicates their foresight about wanting one day to be independent. It's a very important point here because it means that right back in the 1960s, at a time when the Soviet Union was considered all-powerful, the idea that Lithuania would be independent ever was just a pipe dream, even though it happened precipitously just a few decades later. At the time, it must have seemed really unreal. So the opportunity to incorporate new territory and turning that down was a significant step to say, look, we could one day be independent and therefore we don't want to have these problems down the line. Well, sure enough, when the Soviet Union collapsed, Kaliningrad is inherited by the Russian Federation, and this question comes up again. Should Kaliningrad be handed over either to Lithuania, which had a significant minority, or should it be handed over to Germany, which had that historical claim? Well, at the time, the German government was focused on reunifying East and West Germany. And they thought, look, if we discuss Kaliningrad, that's going to make it way too complicated when it comes to dealing with Russia and others. So let's not, miss the wood for the trees and focus on reunification of Germany. And then as part of the final settlement of Germany, they forever gave up the claim to Kaliningrad and Königsberg. And so today, if you ask Germans, even ultra-nationalist parties, they will say, yes, we spiritually imagine it as Königsberg, but in fact, it's never going to be part of Germany. We have given up any claim to that territory for the foreseeable future. It was also, at that time, offered again to Lithuania, who rejected it for the same reasons that they had rejected in the 1960s. They were a newly emerged independent country. They wanted to preserve their language and culture, and they thought that the incorporation of Kaliningrad would make that too difficult. The Polish said that exactly the same thing. So that is why Russia just has continued to hold on to it. Is literally nobody else wanted it. Now, today, that has changed. Russia has put a lot of armaments into Kaliningrad, incredibly important strategically for the Russian Federation. I don't think there's any appetite in Moscow to surrender that territory under any circumstances. But nevertheless, it's kind of an oddity in Northern Europe. And yet there is a new development, and that is that as of next year, the Lithuanian State Border Guard Service will remove 90% of the guards that sit between Kaliningrad and Lithuania. Those guards were put there originally in 2007 as part of Lithuania's accession to the European Union, because by becoming part of the European Union, the eastern border of Kaliningrad is now a border with the EU as a whole. So there's a whole lot of rules around maintaining border control that didn't exist, prior to Lithuania's accession. Obviously, the EU sees that border as secure enough that Lithuania is no longer required to maintain that level of control, which means that all the patrols that are along the rivers Numinus and Savinta and Susipe, I apologize about pronunciation, will be gone. They will retain some 10% of the border controls, basically for those areas that are difficult to surveil through other means, and also areas that might have potential crime. But it does really seem like a normalization of that border. It seems as though the Europeans are comfortable that place is very secure. It's not like some of the other EU borders where they have a lot of problems of drugs, crime, and migration and trafficking, and thus hopefully it's a positive sign. Certainly it'll be a cost-saving measure for the Lithuanian government, but they wouldn't have done this without the authorization and support of the European Parliament. So this is a really interesting development. But what about Kaliningrad as a whole? If you're from that region, if you're from Lithuania or Poland or Sweden or Germany, let me know down below what you think of Kaliningrad, whether you think it should be part of Lithuania or Germany or Poland, or if you have any other opinions on that region, because I've never actually had a conversation about Kaliningrad with my Lithuanian friends. It's something that is just there and it has a historical, connection. I kind of vaguely knew why it wasn't part of the areas, but I've never actually asked the people on the ground what they think. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about Kaliningrad. Please leave them down below. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so if you've had value in this. We talk about this sort of stuff a lot, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.